All right, welcome to Breaking Free Speech. I'm here with my co-host, Alice, because I'm a dad now, and this is what my life is like. So say hello, Alice. All right, cool. I mean, if you're listening to this, you can't see, but if you're watching, she's here. I'm holding her. So it's been a while since we talked, and I want to kind of recap where we are and see how this goes with the podcast holding the baby. So last time we talked, we announced the Patreon. They announced how the skate park wasn't doing so hot, and we're going to kind of look at those numbers and reflect about what the Patreon has done for me so far. Then we're going to go over some news around the skate park going into the winter season, and then lastly we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming holiday. We're on the Patreon page. There's some posts for only Patreon people. October giveaway. There's a BFS calendar I just made for 2025. We're giving away a couple of those on the Patreon. So if you're on Patreon at any level of paid subscription, you can win this free calendar. We're also going to be selling the calendars. The Patreon supporters also got first dibs at the foam pit, so they got to ride it for a week before everyone else got in. So try to make a lot of perks in that Patreon for all our fans. Now, as far as memberships goes, we have, you could join at all different levels, $5, $10, $25. Then our month passes are $80, $120, and $150. So as your unlimited riding passes, as well as some other perks. We have 42 paid Patreon supporters. So for all you people that are supporting us on Patreon, thank you very much. There's like 60 something overall, because there's like 20 non-paid people, which are people that just, you could subscribe at a free level just to see what's going on. Or if you downgrade from a paid one, you just become a free member. So that's right, Alice. And roughly what the Patreon has done for us so far is we float. It comes and goes because people sign on and some people sign off. But we're floating around about $1,000 a month on Patreon, which is awesome, because that means over the course of the year, at that level, it would cover 1 month of our rent, which is great. Which brings me to this month. So we're going to switch over the screen here to a overlay of our sales trends. So the dark blue line is this year. The dotted line is the previous year. Now keep in mind, the previous year was my worst year. So when this thing here in the middle says that we're up 5.3%, that's up 5.3% from our worst year. So you could see just at the beginning, January, February, we're down. March is kind of down. And then you can see mid-March, the two lines cross. And that's basically when I put out that video, mid-March. So then we jumped up, and then we're actually up for April, up for May. The lines cross each other again in June. July's fairly even. My August plummeted. My September plummeted. My September was one of my worst months I've literally ever had. And obviously for October, the dot's low, but that's because we're 8 days in versus last year we had a full October. So generally we're up 5% for the year, which is a tough call because I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple months. November, December are when the busy season starts. So that's when those chickens are going to come home to roost, and hopefully things like the foam pit and everything will help out. Speaking of helping out, the big thing for me is, the money is, good. Well, the money used to be good enough that the winters paid for my summers, and it's not like that anymore. So now I'm fighting to make money in the summer to get me through the summer. And the bike shop has really helped that, and the Patreon has really helped that. And to give you a little insight into how the Patreon works is, you sign up a month from the day you sign up, it'll auto pay you whatever the $10 you're subscribed to. And that money just banks in an account for me. It's not like it gets paid to me. It goes to Patreon. It sits there. And when I'm ready and when I want the money or need the money, I can withdraw that money. So basically, August and September are the crunch months for me. It's been the longest duration of slow months, and it hasn't gotten busy yet. So I've floated around, making it work. My bank accounts get close to zero, and I pay my bills. I'm like at zero or a little below zero, and then the month goes up, and I've been floating around that as it slowly trends down through the summer. And this past month, I actually was finally out of money. So because we had our Patreon for 6-7 months now. We had about $7,000 in our Patreon. We withdrew that money, and that money paid most of my rent this month and got us back into the black. So at this point in time last year, I was actually in about $10,000 debt, which is fine because, like I said, it ramps up to my busy season. I pay that all off in like 45, 60 days. But so all you Patreon supporters, thank you very much. It's been hugely beneficial. I cannot thank you enough because it got me back into the black right now. And about a month from now, we should be busy, and the skate park should be ripping, and we really shouldn't be any problems. So, thank you very much. And if you want to be a part of this silent army of people that keep the skate park open, you can join that Patreon. So, thank you very much. Now, let's move on to the next section here, and we're going to talk a little bit about things coming up around the skate park. Winter hours. Let's look at our calendar here. Boom. All right, our winter hours begin Tuesday, October 15th. What does that mean? That means we're going to be open on Tuesdays. Right now we're not. It means we're going to be open till 10 p.m. rather than 9 p.m. It also means that come November, we will be opening at 1 p.m. on Fridays. And it means Saturdays and Sundays we're open 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., which means Sunday morning sessions are back. So a lot more hours on the schedule. That's good for you. Not as good for me because it means I had to work a lot more. Other things happening. This Monday, the 14th, Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, whichever you prefer. And we're going to talk about that later. We're open at 1 that day, open to 1 to 6 p.m. Friday, October 25th, we're doing our homeschool open house. So if you're a homeschool family, it is $5 for a kid to come in, $10 for your whole family. That same Friday is our 7th annual BFS Halloween scavenger hunt. You know the deal. You meet up at the skate park, you get the hunt list, you go out, you go downtown, you do all the fun stuff, you take some videos and photos, you come back, there's free pizza. What's not to like? Let's go. Not much on the calendar. We're open the 11th. I believe that's Veterans Day. We're open early the day before Thanksgiving, closed on Thanksgiving. And going into December, we got the BFS birthday free day, Tuesday the 17th. That day it's free for everyone. That's BFS birthday. Every year on the BFS birthday, it is free to ride. I'm giving it back to y'all. And of course, New Year's Eve lock-in is on the schedule. Love it. Love to see it. So those are the calendar updates. Other things we've posted, you see open on Columbus Day, Halloween scavenger hunt, right? Hours, we've gone over all this stuff. Homeschool program, that'd be every Friday in November. That's out there too. Moving along, the foam pit's open. If you haven't been there, come in the foam pit. It is a party in the USA. Everyone loves the foam pit. And our last topic for the day, I want to talk about something a little bit, cultural, historical, time sensitive to some degree. Now, before I get into this, I like to say BFS is not political. So I want to say first and foremost, I'm talking about this from a historical, point of view. I'm not talking about this in a political point of view. If you want to make this ideological, you could take that conversation somewhere else. I just want to talk about Columbus Day versus an Indigenous Peoples Day, and actually mention some books that I've read, which are really awesome, and I might recommend you to read them. So everyone, there's this kind of big rejection of Columbus Day. It's just Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't see why we can't just do both. Either way, you can just call it, the America's Day. I don't know what you want to call it, but this whole Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day thing, just from my life perspective, when I was a kid, it was just Columbus Day, and at some point in the last decade or so, there was this big push for Indigenous Peoples Day, which I fully support. I love Indigenous people. I love the history of America. I've read thoroughly about it. I think it's really cool. But along with that, there's been this crazy rejection of Columbus, and it's just it's nothing but bad, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think that's an ideological view that isn't necessarily helpful. It's important to look at history from different points of view, There's a lot of value in that. I was taught one version. Now it's leaning toward another way. I like a nuanced view of history. So getting to that, there's this guy, Charles C. Mann. He's an author, historian. He's written these two books, 1493, 1491. And you'll notice the theme there is it centers around 1492, which is the year that Columbus discovered, he discovered, the new Americas. And these books are really cool because it gives you a very in-depth view based on as much information as this Charles Mann could find about what we knew about the Americas upon first discovery. So 1491, the first book, is really freaking cool because it really documents how well developed the civilizations were in the Americas. Some really, really cool stuff here. It's awesome, great read. I found it to be more fascinating than 1493. But I mean, really, really cool book. It'll give you a crazy appreciation for the Native Americans. His claim in this book is that they basically terraformed the Americas from the Great Plains down to the Amazon. That these landscapes were basically managed by the Indians to benefit their agriculture or hunting practices, which is cool because you've never heard that. And then 1493 is about what he calls the Columbian Exchange, something like that. The Columbian Exchange, yeah. So basically, what the argument in this book is that lineage, both genetically and culturally, in the New World, the Americas, and Europe and Asia, have basically diverged. And upon Columbus, because that was the big turning point. There's clearly documented cases of other Europeans or Asians making it to America, but Columbus marks really the turning point. That's when both genetically and culturally, the humanity reconnected, right? And there's a lot of collateral damage here, like the disease that spread throughout America. One thing that he documents in these books is that the disease completely ravaged the Americas. And that, 100 years later, when some of the explorers were making it out west, they're just finding these giant ghost cities of Indian ghost civilizations because it's been so long. They died so long ago. And it is crazy. And it's super unfortunate. The Europeans had, they would live with their livestock. So they were around a lot more germs. So they were more germ resistant, illness resistant. So their immune systems were just, more used to this. And the stuff they brought to the Americas really, really did mess up the Americas. But similar things happened coming back to Europe that he documents in this 1493 book. So it does kind of go both ways, although it is disproportionately affected. The Americans are disproportionately affected by the disease. Now, the inverse can be said about technology. Now, a lot of plants, you might know this, but both potatoes and tomatoes did not exist in Europe pre the Columbian Exchange. That was brought back. So the Americas fundamentally transformed Europe with a lot of agricultural things like tomatoes and potatoes and maize / corn. So Europe probably got a big advantage in that regard through agricultural plants. The Americas vastly were benefited in technological advancements. While their societies may have been huge and technologically advanced to some degree, they were far, far behind what was happening in Europe. So they brought a lot of things to the New World that didn't exist. And in 1493, he actually talks about how these Native Americans were, a lot of these tribes were always at war with each other, right? And when they learned about firearms, and this is a bit later down the road, maybe 150 years later, maybe even 200, these Native Americans so badly wanted the guns from the early French settlers because that gave them a very strong advantage when they were at war with all these other tribes, because these tribes were just constantly at war with each other. It is a really complex subject, and to boil it down to something as simple as Christopher Columbus was a genocidal maniac is not accurate. Was he a great guy? I don't know. It's 1490, and this crazy guy just sails across the ocean. Think about this. They get on a boat with a couple months worth of provisions with a whole bunch of crews of people. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to sail off into this ocean, not even knowing what's on the other side. Like, that is insane. That means that guy was basically willing to die and kill his whole crew to make a huge discovery for what they believed all of humanity. And in the process, they learned there was a lot more to humanity than they realized. So that's pretty cool. And the Americas benefited by a lot of stuff from Europe coming to the Americas. So it is a complex thing. So my stance is a nuanced, altruistic stance of celebrating, I think, both Columbus and Indigenous people. Because the reality is, if it wasn't Columbus, it was going to be someone else, and if it was someone else, they, based on the data, they could have been far more barbaric than you could argue Columbus was. And I don't think the data really supports that Columbus was particularly barbaric, especially if you don't put it into context with how barbaric some of these indigenous peoples were, especially in Central America with the Aztecs and the human sacrifice and whatnot. So again, you're not going to boil this stuff down into these really simple paradigms of this is just that. We could appreciate both things, and that's what I'm giving you today. So I know we don't talk about stuff like this. I don't want to make this about any particular ideology or any particular belief structure. I'm just talking about the basics of history. It's hard to look at things that happened this long ago and say what's definitely true. There are certain things you can falsify. So I'm just advocating for a more complex, nuanced view of what's going on. And like I said, you celebrate both holidays. I think putting them together makes a lot of sense. And feel free to read the books, and you want to talk to me about it, you can talk to me about it. I will acknowledge that I've heard that Charles Mann wrote these books kind of in response to Guns, Germs, and Steel, which I actually haven't read yet. It's on my list. I think that's it. I think we could have love for everyone. I guess we're done here today. Thanks for watching. If you hated that little historical rambling there, let me know and I won't do it again. And if you liked it, I could try to add some more of this stuff to the podcast, because I do read a lot of books. I listen to a lot of books. It helps form my worldview. I'll see you at the skate park later. Looks like Alice is asleep, which is nice. So take it easy. Bye-bye.